Hello, this is Daniel Buzzmore of the Loving Presence podcast. And in this episode, we're going to discuss the radical shift in identity that sits at the essence of the spiritual path and of all spiritual traditions. And that radical change in identity is the shift between identifying with the ego, with the personality, with what we believe is this inherently existing separate sense of self that we are, realizing directly through direct experience that this separate sense of self is illusory, is non-existent, is an arising conditioned form of the mind, and then realizing our true identity as presence, as loving awareness, as consciousness itself, undifferentiated awareness, clear light, directly realizing what we really are. And this shift of identity is at the core of meditation, is at the core of the spiritual traditions. And first, we must look at this idea of a separate self and see that there's never been a Daniel without the world. So often, we know as society, as human beings, we're in this kind of collective psychosis where we believe that we have this inherently separately existing self in a vacuum. But this arising of Daniel has never been existent outside of a relationship, outside of a subject-object relationship. Meaning the experience of Daniel always arises with the experience of a world, with other objects in that world. Objects could be people, could be plants, could be the sea, the ocean. And so just seeing that, and that's true for each of us, we can recognize there's no such thing as this separately existing self, yet we live as if it's true. And my friends Mark and Paul Levy have this kind of saying, as viewed, so appears. It's like, because we think it's true, it appears to us that it's true, doesn't mean that it's true. It's illusory. And a lot of, the way we live, the decisions we make as humanity also come from this false sense that we have this separate existence. So, there's the I and the other, and who cares about the other? All I care about the I, or all I care is about my family and my small surroundings. All based on this false notion that there's this separately existing I. Doesn't exist, this I. And really, the appearance of the false sense of self, the illusion of the separate self, is only when examined an appearance of thinking and feeling. So we have these thoughts saying, I am this, I am that, I am hungry, I am sad, I am mad at you, I think this, I think that. These are thoughts, these are thought streams. And these thought streams also create different feelings in the body. But is there an I in the thought? There's this separate I in the thought? Well, we can examine and we can ask, well, in our experience, my experience, I also hears. And I also smells and tastes. Can a thought smell and taste and hear? No. So the thought is not I, because the thought cannot do these other things, experience these other things that I experience. In other words, I experience a thought. I experience a feeling. I experience hearing and sensing and tasting and smelling. But who is this I? This I is not a thought. because a thought can experience all of that. The I experience the thought. Same way with a feeling, can feel, let's say I feel happy in my chest or sad in my chest. Well, can that feeling hear? Can that feeling think? Can that feeling see? No. So there's no inherent I in the feeling, because I can hear and smell and experience thinking, and I also experience feeling. So then who is this I? And most of us, maybe we get to recognize, yeah, that's true. There's this I, and it's not the thinking, the feeling, and the sense perceptions, but we still can believe that it's a separately existing I, because we say, well, but each of us has different thoughts and feelings and sense perceptions. Well, when we go look for that I and we say, well, who is this I that's common in all these experiences? Who is this I that's common in thinking and feeling and perceiving? We actually cannot find a separate localized I. We will not find that I as a separate localized entity. What we will find is beyond words, but if given words, is this kind of transparent space-like awareness, presence, but we cannot locate it anywhere in the body or outside the body and say, this is here. Kind of like I could say, here's the nose, here's forehead. We cannot do that, because we will see it's everywhere and nowhere, really. It's non-localized. Really, it's what it is. It's non-localized awareness. All abiding presence, all abiding awareness. So here's the kind of magic in that shift of identity. We see that thoughts, feelings, perceptions, sense perceptions, they have no I in them. They're like streams of energy. You can imagine a stream of energy of hearing, a stream of energy of feeling, a stream of energy of thinking. And the mind, the body mind, is just like this kind of sensor picking up on these different streams of energy and creating some experience based of that, which involves all of these senses, which creates an illusion of like a perceiver and the perceived. Right? There's the perceiver, the perceiving, and the perceived. Let's say you're looking at me. So I am the perceived here, you are the perceiver, and there's the perceiving is the looking. Well, when we look for the perceiver, we cannot find a localized perceiver. Okay, this is why it's deemed as an illusion. We say like the separate self is an illusion because we cannot find it. It appears that there is a separate perceiver, but there actually isn't. It just appears like there's a separate perceiver. And then what then is realized is profound, is really the perceiver, the perceiving, and the perceived are one. They're all appearing in the one awareness, the one consciousness. That is what is realized. And that is the I. That is realized as I. I as this awareness, non-localized, non-differentiated. Okay? Now, this comes to be realized through deep inquiry and deep practices. The different spiritual traditions have different methods for this direct recognition. But what's important to understand is this is about a direct recognition. It's not about reading about it. A lot of people read about it, they speak about it, they don't actually have a direct recognition. And it's also really takes time for most people for that recognition to stabilize itself in our daily experiences. We can say that when it's fully stabilized, meaning that recognition is completely present throughout the day, that is enlightenment. That's the complete stage of enlightenment. Well, for most of us, this body mind included, it's like it's a process of kind of integrating that understanding, integrating that direct seeing that I am awareness, that everything is awareness, until it's like the appearance of the body mind fully meets that understanding, fully is one with that understanding. It's the mind, the appearances of the mind are freed of illusion, match true reality, or like a mirror to true reality. It's really kind of hard to explain in words because I'm using my and mind for that. But we can say in another way of thinking about it is, I am loving presence. I am that presence. Well, the full enlightenment is that thoughts, the feelings, that actions that arise from this presence through this body mind, through this localized body mind and a non-localized presence, fully are fully one, fully know they are that presence. They're not in some illusion, denial that they are that. In some way, there's no identity in a way, other than the presence that's speaking. It's like speaking directly through presence without an illusion of like a separate self speaking. It's the closest I can come to in language to explain that right now. And of course, that's my current understanding, which may change and others may think of it differently. And of course, even that is kind of this probably infinite process of like refinement of what it looks like. But in the depths of that, and I like to come to the teachings of the Buddha, is like referring to enlightenment, or he calls arhathood, being arhat is really the mind is the body mind is completely free from greed, hatred, and illusion or ignorance. Meaning these kinds of thought streams and feeling streams and therefore action streams that arise from greed, which is like mind, this sense idea of mind, me, wanting more, attachment to things, and hatred, which can also be seen as kind of resistance, like, no, I don't want this, pulling away, avoidance, aversion. Aversion is a great word for that. And ignorance, which is kind of the root of all of that, which is just the belief there's some separate self here. The kind of thought streams, feeling streams, actions in a fully enlightened mind don't arise from that. Not even the thought. They cannot arise. And the Buddha kind of distills different levels of enlightenment until reaching that place where just these kind of thoughts can't even arise because the mind has been so immersed in its true nature and in recognizing the truth of no self, no separate self, the truth of impermanence, the truth of nirvana. And so that is kind of the processes of embodying presence more and more fully and awakening to our identity, not as a separate self, but as awareness itself. And this is kind of this kind of point of contention sometimes. Well, like a lot of traditions, including like Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, they speak of the self with a capital S as like the true self, or like Tibetans speak of the clear light, true nature. And then Buddha spoke about no self, but Buddha also said spoke about the unborn and the deathless. Okay. And really it's two sides of the same coin, of the same deep understanding, which is looking at the level of manifestation. There's no separate self in manifestation. Looking at the level beyond of the deathless, the unborn, there's just one self. Or not, there's no two, they even say not call it one. There's just this presence that's there, that's beyond the manifested. That is our true nature. So it's two sides of the same coin. If you realize one, you realize the other. Kind of like if you realize light, you realize darkness. If you realize darkness, you realize light. If you realize no separate self, you realize the big self. You realize the self, capital S, you realize no self. And the entire spiritual journey is about that transition. And for me, I've kind of, as my process became more and more refined, also working with people and also following the teachings of my teachers, especially my teacher Gary. It's been my main teacher for this lifetime, in a big way. I've kind of refined the process with people to really help them get this direct recognition of their true nature, of awareness, because I find that that is the fastest way out of suffering, is to recognize true nature. And then it doesn't mean that now difficult thoughts and feelings don't arise, but then from that recognition, it's way easier to come back to the body mind and to then integrate, you know, integrate kind of stuck traumas and kind of limiting beliefs that are there that are not true, and then work with them and integrate them and dissolve them and bring presence to them. And so I find that you can't fix the mind with the mind, which is kind of like a lot of traditional therapy and coaching is like that. It's really about, first of all, recognizing what is us beyond the mind, and then going back to the body mind, integrating all these split off parts of our psyche that are split off by trauma, which is also really important to do that return, because a lot of people, they recognize their true nature, which is amazing to get there. But then there's still someone identified with separate self. They don't know, but there's someone identified with separate self that doesn't want to feel emotions, that has aversion to kind of painful emotions and thought streams. And so awareness doesn't have aversion to anything. So that aversion is a form of the illusion of a separate self manifesting, a separate self that doesn't want to feel something, doesn't want to, experience something. And then they kind of get stuck in that. But really the process is embodying our true nature in the form here and now in our life, whatever it looks like. And it's such a beautiful unfolding, like a lotus flower, of how that embodiment more and more deepens. And so often to me, the process, and it's not, nothing is linear like that, binary like that. Life is very much a cyclical and spiral process, but it's the way I kind of think of it when I work with people, and I think of effective path as tools and processes, inquiries that help people recognize their true nature and stabilizing that. And then simultaneously or afterward, could be both, and exploring and integrating the psyche, the split of parts of the psyche, into a more unified psyche, and really into true nature. So that instead of like, cause trauma, we have kind of all these split off parts of ourselves that are fighting each other. It's like a war in our minds between different voices and conflicts in our emotions. We become more of a unified voice, which is a voice that's not necessarily with words. It's a silence of presence that then from that we move in loving presence in our lives. This is some reflection on the path on what I think is the major shift in identity, and then what is then integrating from that shift, really embodying that. And in a way, both are kind of infinite. And I think we can get more and more stabilized in recognizing our true nature and deepening into that. That's the kind of the infinity from the unmanifested side. And then there's the infinity from the manifested side, is like that, the expression of that understanding, the expression of our true nature through the form of the body mind could take infinite ways and infinite refinement. So it's this beautiful two-sided infinite journey, the unmanifest and the manifest. Shiva, Shakti. Okay, masculine, feminine, one. Okay, so thank you. Hope this was helpful. Any of you interested in kind of processes to really recognize the true nature and then also integrate split off parts of the psyche? That's the work I do and love to do. You can find more about me in the description and on my YouTube channel, my email. which is Daniel Moore at livingselfmastery.com, more with 2 O's. Share with me your thoughts, share with me your insights, and if you want to go deeper and really kind of a process, email me and we can have a conversation about that. Thank you. Peace be with you. See you next week.